Hello everyone, this is CounterYolo again, bringing you another video about Star Trek Online. And in today's video, we're going to go over the new Risian Cruiser. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a delay to get this out, but it's finally coming out. And it's coming out before a lot of you have probably earned the ship. So we'll go over how it compares versus a lot of other starships in the game, go over its new trade and console, go over some of the new basic summer goodies that I feel are noteworthy to talk about. Then we'll have a TLDW towards the end of the video. I'll also have a slight one slide tangent about the Solasta video because that should have been coming out today. But because of the social DLC coming out next week, it's going to be delayed by about another 2 weeks or so. Anyway, feel free to see the time links in the description or at the time bar at the bottom of the screen. With that, let's get started. So anyway, when it comes to Starship Comparisons, the Risian Cruiser is a standard cruiser. My prediction was incorrect on the Risian Cruiser, as I mentioned in the last video. It is just a standard cruiser instead of a multi-mission cruiser. So with standard cruisers, you have 2 damage resistance things in your mastery package, as well as HP regen per 3 seconds and an extra 10% whole HP. You do get full cruiser commands, which is nice, but unfortunately you do not get any access to dual cannons, nor any hangar bays, which makes this one of the most, or pretty much the most lackluster Starship subclass, frankly, in the game. There's really nothing great going for them, besides the fact that you can use every cruiser command. So it is why most people like Dreadnought cruisers a bit better, or flight deck carriers, or something else, just because they're just way more fun, generally speaking. Anyway, this is the stats for the Risian Cruiser. 1.3 hull, 1.1 shields, which if you compare it versus the general base stats for most cruisers, it's a little bit low on its hull and shields, but it has a smidget higher anyway turn and impulse. So thematically, I think that's appropriate. It's not supposed to be the standout cruiser in any fashion. It's just supposed to be this pretty ship that's like they're watching all of the different Risian corvettes, fly and race around. Thematically, it's very appropriate. Its bridge offer seating, as a change versus the Tier 5 version, it's got a Lieutenant Commander temporal seat, which is upgraded from its Lieutenant Universal that the Tier 5 had. With the Tier 6X, you get an extra tactical console. Big things to note, though, versus the Tier 5 version, you actually are down a tactical console. So it is actually, so you actually do have to, well, for the few of you who actually have the Tier 5 luxury cruiser account unlocked, I don't, but some of you all that are more veteran than I am might have the old Tier 5 Risian Cruiser. If you do, and also earn the Tier 6 version, you're going to have to decide for yourself, is this tactical console, this extra one that you have, better than having an extra bridge officer ability and that temporal seat available here? That's not something that I can really answer for you. That's going to be something you're going to have to decide for yourselves. Now, of course, for some of you that are super new and haven't earned any Tier 6 starships yet, the new Risian Cruiser, perfectly fine. And honestly, for the way that I personally tank in the game, having this type of seating is pretty much perfect for me. Because the way that I like to tank with broadsiding generally ends up me having 5 tactical abilities. With polar on builds, it's 6. So for polar on builds, I would use all 6 abilities here. For non-polar on broadsiding builds, I would use 5, and then I'd use the extra one for its specialist seat, either for hazard bidders for an extra whole heal, or timeline claps for an extra pseudo AOE gravity wall. That's basically just the tactical version that has a smaller radius, frankly, for its effect. So for me, for bridge officer seating for a general broadsiding firewall tank build, the seating is perfectly fine. It's not a standout, but it's still very, very serviceable. Now, that being said, there is the Fleet Reliance, which is the old Miranda fleet starship. I know we just got the Malachowski a little while ago, which is another Miranda variant that can use all the Miranda skins and such. But the first Fleet Miranda that was Tier 6. Basically has the same bridge officer seating and very comparable base stats too. The difference being that is that it's Lieutenant Commander Pilot instead of Lieutenant Commander Temporal. And I think that's why, in my opinion, the Risian Cruiser got Temporal instead of Pilot, was because the Reliant had Pilot. Maybe that's just me with a little bit too much speculation on my hands, but that's what I'm guessing is going on here. That being said, the Reliant also has 4 base tactical consoles, while the Risian Cruiser only has 3. For tier 6 anyway. Tier 5 obviously still has 4, but the tier 6 one only has 3. So if you're someone who wanted this seating and don't care about that specific specialist seat and you're just going for performance, the Reliant is a very comparable and fine Starship 2. Now, when it comes to tanking, especially if you're wanting TOS themed stuff, I think the Fleet Gemini is probably one of the more underrated ones. Everyone wants a Connie, but realistically, like the Fleet Sagittarius / Gemini is still a great ship as well, and it's temporal seating as well. So if you're okay going down to 5 tactical abilities and Lieutenant Commander Science here, being able to use the strong tanking console from the C-Store variant and put it on the Fleet version, and then going to getting its lower tier dilithium store skin. This is a very fine tanking Starship as well. Technically, the Kronos Temple Dreadnought Cruiser is basically the Sagittarius, but slightly better because it's got higher stats and an extra tactical console, and its unique console is better. That ship doesn't have any non-future variant skin. It's just its one skin and that's it. The Sagittarius, at least, you know, has a TOS variant skin option too. So from a space bar perspective, the Gemini is probably a bit more appealing to a vast majority of the player base versus the Kronos. So that's why I have this here instead of the Kronos this time. Legendary Connie, I know a lot of you who spend a lot of money in the game probably have that ship as well. So if you don't care about the unique console, that ship has an extra 2 tactical consoles over the Sagittarius. So in many ways, that ship can be considered better. In other ways, if you don't have any consoles, the Gemini is better in many ways too. However, what I will note as a big note here, if you don't care about unique consoles but like the bridge officer seating, the C-Store Tactical American Worker Cruisers are probably the ship that would be a natural upgrade from the Risian Cruiser. Again, same bridge officer seating. Difference being that your Lieutenant Commander Universal here does not have any specialists here, which means you are going to be forced to use 6 tactical abilities on this ship. But you have Miracle Worker available too, which also means with its base 4 tactical consoles, you end up with 6 tactical consoles on this ship with tier 6X, which is really nice. Also, as a note here, its base stats here are actually a smidge higher on the KDF side than the Federation side. Again, it's some slight weird variation stuff, and it also gets a cloak. Not really super important, but it's there nonetheless. I also have the Fleet Derritex here because I feel that the Derritex needs a legendary version. And also its turning sucks, and it's another way to show that it's really, really bad. But it's got the potential for 6 tactical abilities, just like the Risian Cruisers. So if you want to fly this ship, it's not the best in the world, but it's not a terrible option either. So there is that for you if you are thinking about that or were wondering. Again, I still think the flagships are still one of the best tanks in the game, so I still will put them here. And they have similar bridge officer seating to the Risian Cruiser as well. But it's just there nonetheless for y'all to, just there for you to see their base stats and seeing that Dreadnought Cruisers, really the big thing is that a lot of them just have lower turn versus your regular cruisers. And that's really the biggest difference. We also have the Legendary Ambassador. Not my favorite ship in the world, but it's there nonetheless. There also is the Fleet version, which is Commander Temporal as well. But its seating is very, very, very similar to some other ships that have already been shown, so I'm not going to show that one too. Nonetheless, you know, it also has a Lieutenant Commander Temporal with a Commander Special seat alongside it. Has potential for actually 7. It is just a plain 6 tactical ability Starship as well. The Promo Constitution from Promo Boxes also can use 6 tactical abilities, so if you care about that, then that is there as well for you. Keep in mind, no, from promo packs, the promo Miracle Flight Deck carriers are also pretty nice, and the legendary Temporal Flight Deck carrier is also a very, very, very strong starship too. Again, as I mentioned many times on these videos, this particular starship, I was surprised that Cryptic let a starship this strong be released as an account unlocked starship in a big starship bundle as a unique starship. It's a very, very strong starship. The Fleet Coach is a tier 1, tier 6 starship, which is fairly unique inside the game. Got Battle Cloak and really, really high base stats, but otherwise it's lackluster in many other ways. The Tycho Core is similar to this ship, but it's C-Store only, and it also has some other lackluster things with it too. But of course, when it comes to the fleet stuff, the Fleet Miracle Worker Battle Cruisers and the Fleet Flight Deck Assault Carriers are insanely good value for what you're getting in terms of both performance as well as base stats and all that stuff. So whether it's just raw damage with your weapons, or you want to have some fun stuff with hangar bays, both these ships are very, very, very nice. Okie dokie. With that all said, let's go ahead and get into the stuff with the trading console with this ship. I'm still using the thing from the last video, but in terms of its console, it's basically just the old Solasta Wave impeller. I think they added enhanced to the name of the console. Basically just the old one, but they added passives to it, and they made it so that it's usable on all starships instead of just Risian starships. That being said, you know, if you have the Risian science vessel and decide to just get the tier 5 version, the tier 5 version's console is still going to be usable on the Risian science vessel, because the Risian science vessel is still a Risian starship. The way that I see this console is that it's basically a budget AoE exotic console. It wasn't really super noteworthy in the past because we didn't have it as an accessible option to science vessels in the game. Then last year we got a Risian science vessel, and now this year we're getting this ship, which lets this console now, the tier 6 version at least, be usable on all science vessels in the game too. So yeah, there's definitely that for you. I haven't actually tested the console because I didn't earn the tier 5 version to really tell you if this thing scales super well with EPG and such. If it's a really strong console, then cool. Maybe it's one of the nice ones that you throw into your EPG DPS builds. Its new trade is called Leisurely Pace. Every 5 seconds when you're at or below 25% throttle, you get some stacking EPG and control expertise, as well as whenever you use control abilities, enemies within 5 kilometers of that control, of those control abilities, have their flight speed and damage reduced for 5 seconds. Which, you know, when this is fully stacked at 4 stacks, you're looking at a debuff of over 60% damage for 5 seconds. That being said, you aren't going to have control abilities going on every 5 seconds in builds, so it's gonna be a temporary debuff, but it's still a very noteworthy debuff. That being said as well, though, it's a very situational trait. Only in a couple of TFOs are you really going to want this type of thing. And then it's going to be in those TFOs where you're basically stuck to basically just park and fight enemies for like 2, 3, 4 minutes. So the biggest one obviously is going to be Draenor Gauntlet Elite. That's probably the most noteworthy of all the TFOs in the game that I can think of that actually is reasonably tough, that a trait like this would be useful. Most other maps, I don't think it's as noteworthy versus something like that. So if you're playing a map other than that one, maybe not. But hey, you know what? If you're someone who's still relatively new to the game, doing relatively new to exotic builds, don't have that many strong traits for them, might as well throw this one in while you're in the process of getting other better things. And in my opinion, this is kind of the way that I personally feel that event starships should be. They should be good starships, not the best, and their console and traits should be good and serviceable, but not necessarily the best. There should be something that holds them back. And for the trait, it's just that it's very situational. For the console, it's probably going to be that I'm guessing it's probably not going to be the best scaling console, but it might actually be. Who knows? In terms of the new summer goodies, here's the 3 that I really like. There's a bunch of other cosmetic stuff. If you're into those things and the new Vanity Shield, go for it. I don't think they're really that noteworthy for me to really mention in the video itself. In terms of actual things for doing stuff in TFOs and missions and such, we have the new Risian kit frame, which is kind of like the same as like the last year's kit frame, in that you can re-roll mods on it. So that's nice. Instead of having its passive, you can do some extra kit performance stuff based on how many kit frames, Rising kit frames you have in your ground setup. Instead, this time it's that you basically have fire damage immunity. That's really the big difference. And so for me, it seems like this is probably going to be the best in slot kit frame for Bug Hunt Elite. It might not be, maybe the other one might still be better, but this is probably a very strong contender, at least for Bug Hunt Elite. It also happens to have a rebreather as part of the kit frame, so you don't have to keep those rebreathers anymore, or a rebreather release for your captain. Probably still keep them on your bridge officers for those 2 missions in the game. And if Cryptic decides to release more missions, so be it. I think this is partial consolation, because Cryptic promised us years ago that they were going to give us a slot for to have our EV suits in. And this is like saying, we're sorry, we haven't added that yet. We keep on having technical difficulties. We will get to it eventually, you know. So I think that's part of the reason why that's part of this kit frame. The new Universal Kit module, I can't remember the name of it, so I just put it. It's basically a tidal wave, and in my testing, it doesn't knock down, and it's moderate damage. It doesn't seem to be performing that great, frankly. Maybe that's just me. Maybe there's something that I'm neglecting about it that might make it really strong, but I'm not seeing why it would be that useful. It's fun, but it's not that useful. The new Risian triple, it's just a team-wide control resist triple instead of the team-wide crit chance that we got last year. The crit chance one is much better, frankly, for most people in the game. This might be decent for ground PvP though. Granted though, in a lot of ground PvP, people just like insta like kill people, so I don't know if that would actually be decent in ground PvP, but that's just me speculating here. Anyway, with that all said, let's get to the TLDR and TLDW stuff. All right, so for TLDW, we have a new Risian Cruiser as part of the summer event. Its upgrade for the tier 5 is that its Lieutenant Universal seat is now Lieutenant Commander Universal, and that Lieutenant Commander seat has temporal stuff available to it. Unfortunately, the new tier 6 Risian Cruiser has 1 less tactical console than the tier 5. So if you happen to have the tier 5 and earn the tier 6, it's going to be up to you as to which one is going to be better for your particular playstyle. Keep in mind the old tier 6 Fleet Reliance / Fleet Miranda, it has a very comparable base stats as well as bridge officer seating as the new Risian Cruiser. So don't feel too bad if you don't feel like you have the time necessary to earn the Starship this summer. The trading console, in my opinion, are pretty much filler exotic stuff for you. If you're new to the game and don't have stuff like that for an exotic build like Fear Racing Science Festival from last year, this is a nice ship to earn to give yourself a decent trait and console for that Starship. The trait's very situational, and in my opinion, it's really only going to be for generic on Elite would you find this even remotely close to being considered a very strong contender for one of your best Starship trait slots. The console, unless it scales super well on EPG, probably isn't going to compete against any of the high-end stuff either. But again, this is stuff that I think is totally fine for at least for event stuff anyway in the game, and I think this is totally fine. The new summer stuff, we have a new Risian kit frame, which I think is going to be best in slot for Bug Hunt Elite because of the fire immunity, and it's still rerollable. The new Risian triple gives you team-wide control resist instead of critical chance. So not as great as one from last year. There's also a universal kit module, which I don't think is that particularly noteworthy. It's just you send a tidal wave. Whip to you. There's also some new Barbie options as well, with in space and ground from the summer events as well. So that's basically it for this video. As a aside, because the Solasta video was supposed to come out today and it's not, it's because when I was about to record it yesterday, I looked on Reddit really quick and I saw that, oh, hey, the Solasta free DLC for Sorcerers is launching a week from now. Fun. I was gonna have a bunch of tangents on Sorcerer meta magic in here for perspective things for spells, and my subclass list only had the 24 current subclasses, not the 3 new Sorcerer subclasses, which are going to be coming out next week. And I didn't feel like for my one video I'm going to have for Solasta on this channel that I was going to release a video that would be outdated in less than a week. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to wait a week. I am going to then play this stuff with all 3 subclasses when it comes out, experiment with the different meta magic stuff for possibilities, and then add those things to the currently really long video, and release it in in a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. Sorry for the delay, but it's not something that I can really control in terms of when the devs decide to release cool stuff. Again, I'm not going to release an outdated video, so I'm just going to wait to release this video because this is a Star Trek Online channel, pretty much, and Solasta is a fun thing, and so I just want a one and done thing for that video game on the channel. Keep in mind, there's a decent chance, because it's 170 slides right now, plus whatever stuff I add for Sorcerer, and the tanking in this Hero 6X Error video was 181 slides. This video right here could possibly be longer than that video. So it's gonna be interesting how that one performs. It's gonna be this weird one-off thing. I have no idea what's gonna come out of all that. But anyway, yeah, that long video will be coming out in probably about 2 weeks from now, and then I'll go back to regular Star Trek Online stuff. I know I promised that it'd probably be by mid-July when things go back to normal. Because that Solasta DLC is coming out next week, it's probably going to be another 2 weeks before we get back to regular Star Trek Online stuff on the channel. So I do apologize for that, but I'm being realistic of how things actually are. Anyway, this is a relatively short video for me. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy the summer event. And enjoy trying to stay calm and sane in this current world that we are in as well. At least from an economic standpoint, I will make this aside as well. There are a couple of interesting patterns that are going on. There are some stores that are starting to hog food. There are some economics that are expecting and some very large appreciations of the purchasing power of the dollar within the next couple of months. And my estimations is that's going to be sort of the same way as well. So especially if you're someone who's like, hey, I don't think I can actually have enough time to earn the, the Risian Cruiser, don't fret about buying it out. Really don't fret about it. It's not really something that I feel like is going to be too game changing at all to the game. And even if the Risian console happens, or the Risian Cruiser's console happens to be really strong for exotic builds, there are plenty of other clicky consoles that are available from the C store that you can slowly earn an account unlock for your account. So don't really fret too much about it. Just take your time, take care of yourself, and make sure that you're financially okay. Because in the next few months, things are going to get interesting. I can almost guarantee that's basically going to be the case. So anyway, thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of your week.